I was upset. I'm sorry. And it's like, okay, that might happen, but I just don't know how good that is to maintain that health in your relationship.
Yeah,
I just don't.
I don't see that as a healthy scenario
Right.
at all. I don't even see how it can be. Although I guess I can twist my mind to say like a toxic person and a toxic person can jive. But I would not describe that as healthy.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Nadia.
And it's me, Coach T.
And we are two average people.
Yes, we are.
I hope you've been enjoying the last few episodes that we put up. Talking about different things, and we've got a few comments from you guys, and we love hearing from you. So if you have not checked out our latest podcast, please go check it out. Everything is there. Every Monday we have a new one for y'all, and we are excited about the topics we talk about, and the stuff that you guys bring to us. So go check us out. We've talked about this before, but we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. And that is communication, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you can never get tired of talking about communication, right? but
so many conversations.
There's so much to talk about, right? Get it? Communication, talk, right? Okay, all right. Sorry, y'all. I'm corny. but really, the question that I have for you, babe, is do you think you can maintain a healthy relationship while cursing at your spouse? Oh, sorry. So what do I mean by that?
Okay, yeah. Let's dive deeper into what we mean.
So I'm not talking about, okay, you come home and you're heated and you're talking about something that happened during the day, and you throw a couple F-bombs in there or whatever. I'm talking about a relationship where you guys actively curse at each other, like when you're arguing, or
like as a point of order, this is what we about to do, this is how we about to talk to
this is how you talk to each other. Yes, like you're communicating, or you're arguing about something, or you're having a disagreement.
Okay.
And all right, F-bombs get thrown in there, and
like just because it's off the rip, that's what we doing.
And I mean,
wow.
Every relationship dynamic is different.
Yeah, for sure.
But can you really have a healthy relationship? What level of respect do you have there for people who exist in that space?
I got to tell you, that's a tough one for me, for sure, because my wife always tells me, Nadia always tells me that I'm a decent communicator, and I don't think I'm a great communicator much at all. But I do think I mean what I say. I think I mean what I say.
Good. He's good.
I mean what I say. And so you can trust me to say what's on my mind. But to be cussing like that at each other, like on the regular, as a point of order, man, I don't know about that. And now I'm not saying that you can't have a healthy relationship, because for me that just feels extra toxic. You know what I'm saying? Because when I start throwing out, profanity or whatever the case may be, that it's not at you, it's because there's something that bad happening. Like, it's a measure of my thought process at that point, my intensity level.
You're right.
I'm like, yo, right. Getting duck. Don't ask me why. That's not the time. That's not the time. Hit the ground, because we need to hit the ground. It's life-saving time. That type of thought process. And before that, I don't understand why we would need to be communicating with each other on that level.
Well, that's the thing. Like, people can have an argument, and they'll curse at each other, directed toward each other, and then it's like, I was upset. I'm sorry. And it's like, okay, that might happen, but I just don't know how good that is to maintain that health in your relationship. I just don't.
I don't see that as a healthy scenario at all. I don't even see how it can be. Although I guess I can twist my mind to say like a a toxic person and a toxic person can jive, but I would not describe that as healthy necessarily. Like just because it works for a couple or two does not make it healthy across the board.
Right, right. And I guess that's good that you define that, because you have to say, okay, well, for us, it wouldn't be healthy, but what if you have two people that are used, that's how they communicate, that's what they grew up seeing,
Yeah,
that's how they talk regular.
that's how they talk regular.
So why would it be any different in their relationship?
Look, I went to college in Boston, and I love my Boston folk, but some
Body mouth?
they don't care, bro. Whatever falls out of their face. You ever seen that movie Ted? It's like the movie Ted. It's whatever, man. Some folks, it's whatever, and nobody seems to get upset. It's just what happens. So I can't say it doesn't work, which I'm absolutely not going to say that, because they're clearly working in some places, but I still, even after experiencing it, can't call it healthy. So,
I agree. I feel like I wouldn't call it healthy either. But for that couple who does exist in that space, where do you cross the line?
that's the question.
So now, if is the next step physical altercation before, you know what I'm saying? How do you define, like, how do you exist in that space and not lose respect for each other over time? Or
I don't know. Maybe because, like, again, if you're somebody who was raised or grew up in an environment that was rough, that was tumble, then that, things like swearing doesn't really bother you much. So on the same token, it's not necessarily something that would carry over into your relationship and have you thinking different. Maybe you experience it outside so much that inside your relationship it just feels normal. It's just normal and healthy are still different, and I think we've normalized a lot of things that aren't healthy but can work because we're all a party to it. So
right.
I guess the question then becomes, how best we can work in those circumstances. I mean, can we find a way to be in an unhealthy or even toxic environment and still have a healthy communication one to another?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the key, really, what you're saying. I don't know per se, and I do want to go on record in saying that I'm not trying to be judgmental.
Not at all.
At anybody's choice of how they choose to have how you guys choose to manage your relationship. I don't know why that was so hard for me to get out. Like, it'd be like that sometimes. Yeah. So I'm not trying. We're not trying to be judgmental, but we are trying to examine, because we know what standards we have in our relationship.
Yeah.
But we also realize that our relationship and the way that we choose to have our relationship is not the same as other people.
Yeah.
And so really you have to ask yourself, how much respect is there in that relationship? That's
what I'm saying. Maybe it might not be a matter of respect. Maybe for some people their need is getting met, and so everything else is whatever.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I guess that.
Yeah, as long as they're not physically hurting me, but I just wouldn't describe that as healthy.
Right.
I just wouldn't describe that as healthy.
So how long do you think people can coexist that way? I mean, if it's not healthy, that's one thing, but do you feel like some people are more comfortable being in that space, even though other, people may not describe it as healthy, but sometimes that bondage is comfortable.
Bondage is comfortable.
That way of living is comfortable.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think is most scary, because that comfortability comes on relatively quickly in certain circumstances, especially if you're used to that treatment outside. Inside your relationship, I'm sure it would only take 1-2 times, and then that's just the way it is, and then you kind of just accept it. I don't know. I guess my thought goes, what can happen? What can we do as those people who want to help define boundaries in our own relationship to find that place that you feel comfortable with truly,
Right.
internally, not because the external environment says that this is normal and normalized, but what am I actually comfortable with? I don't know. I think you have some communication tips here that you talked through. And I want to make sure we touch on that because I really thought they were really good.
Yeah, so I definitely we came up with some communication tips that we wanted to discuss and just put forward things that we have practiced in our relationship, but also to kind of lead you down, hopefully, a healthy communication path. And obviously, the first one for me would be don't curse at your spouse. I mean, and again, this is not, oh God, I had a rough day, and let me tell you, and this is directly cursing at them and using words that could tear them down, really, over time.
Yeah.
So
would you say that stopped at cursing? Because I like that. I like what you said. What you're talking about is building up and tearing down. I like that thought process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I came at you and I was cursing you out, you'd be like, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Our relationship clearly is not, there's something
else.
Something going on here.
Yeah, there's something different.
Because we've set that boundary with each other. But yeah, it's like, so the couple who that boundary is not a boundary.
It's not a boundary.
How would you then navigate?
I wouldn't even, like we said, don't cuss at your spouse. But the truth is, it's not even so much the cursing. It's the purposeful knocking down of.
Mm-hmm.
It's the dragging. It's the belittling.
Yeah,
it's all of it
that kind of comes with it.
Yes, it's all of it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because I can walk in the house and go, "What the bleep is going on here?" Right? But at the end of the day, if you ain't tripping about it, you ain't tripping about it. But I could also come in the door and have like a real moment that has no cussing in it that makes you go, "Wow!"
Right.
Something's definitely and clearly happened here.
Right.
We need to figure this out.
Right. That's that is a really good point, babe. That is a really good point. I feel like the cursing in and of itself does open the doors to belittling.
Yeah, and the general tearing down. Yeah. You know, one thing, a side note, and I'm gonna elongate this whole episode, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I always wanted to know, especially when it came to women and how women experience men behavior when they say men are bashing. I always wanted to know what that actually meant, like in context of your real lives, because a lot of the time for men, what we hear is bashing or woman bashing is just us making an observation that on its merit we could levy at each other one to another as well, as far as men goes internally. But it feels like when we take that same energy to the woman, we say you're being bashed or we're bashing. What does that mean in context from your perspective?
It's a good question. I mean, I obviously can only answer for me.
That's fair.
But
that's fair.
The way I see it, when I feel like there's women bashing, it's usually when you're making a generalization that you don't also then include the men side in. So that's like saying all women are this, and it's like, okay, well, it's hard not to feel singled out if you didn't also acknowledge that all men are also this. Do you see what I'm saying? So for me, that is level. How, that is personally how I feel targeted as a woman.
Right.
And I think in any situation like that, you do have to look internally, but it's easy to say, yeah, all women are bad drivers. Except we didn't talk about the men who go speeding down the road,
right,
and driving all crazy and all that. Now, you see what I'm saying? So it feels targeted at that point, because it's like, well, what was your point in that statement by saying all women are bad drivers? Understandably, you may have been surrounded with family members, friends that weren't good drivers, but to now make that generalization seems like you're really trying to target, or you're trying to um, really trying to belittle.
Hmm.
And so
So,
that's where the
it feels
woman
like
bashing
the
comes in.
purpose of the statement is to belittle.
Correct. And that's where women bashing, I feel like
Okay.
women bashing that's where that comes in for me, because it's like, okay, well, you could make your point of whatever your point is without classifying a whole group of women in your point. So it seems like you're trying to use women to prove that whatever you were saying was right, but you did that by putting us down.
Okay. All right.
And it's like, well, is that all you got? because you could absolutely prove your point without putting all women down, or without putting all men down for that matter.
Hey.
You can prove your point. And I feel like when you now classify women in a category, a negative category, for that matter,
right,
that's where the women bashing comes in.
Okay, so that kind of leads us into what I see is your next point here, and that is use I messages. So rather saying you did this, say I felt like when this happened. I think that makes so much sense, because at the end of the day, I think there's a statement that holds true that we as people don't really push enough, and that is, no one can make you feel anything. That is a very true thing. Like, no one can make you feel it.
Well, hold on now, because you're going to get a lot of arguments when it comes to that.
I understand. I get it. But this is the part, is like, psychologically speaking, science tells us that it's just not possible, because I can't go inside your head and make you do anything. But what I can do is manipulate situations. What I can do is have a feeling that you have a reaction to, or an emotion to. But these are feelings that we have to ultimately own. We have to own it. And we have to start there. So that's why I like use I messages, because you're communicating a lot of the time the same thing, but you're saying it from your perspective. Walking into the situation, owning it, and trying to at least come to the resolution from that perspective.
I hear what you're saying. Two parts to that. Yes, I agree that you should use I messages, because when you say, I felt this way, or I believe, it does. You're speaking for yourself.
Yeah,
you're not speaking for anybody else,
right.
Your spouse or whatever. You're speaking for yourself. But the thing where you were saying that no one can make you feel a certain way, I think, that could create a lot of pushback. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I feel like people will push against that, because if I said, "Hey, babe," say you came in the house every day, when you came home, you went straight into the studio. You didn't come in, you didn't come upstairs, say hi, how you doing, how was your day, blah blah blah. And so I said to you, "Hey, babe, I feel a certain way about that. I understand that you're focused and you're motivated and you got this thought that you need to get down, so you run straight into the studio, but you didn't come and check and make sure I was okay, and say you haven't seen you all day, and so I'd really appreciate it if you just came upstairs and said hi to me."
Right.
But you continue to do that. I eventually would feel, because I've stated, "Hey, this makes me feel this way," and you continue to do it, then one could argue that you're making me feel this way.
I guess one could make that argument, but for me, it's more like, this thing happened and I feel this way about it.
Yes.
Like, that doesn't change even in that circumstance to me.
I see.
Because even in that circumstance, I might not have heard the intensity of your request. And I think that a lot of the time, especially, I can only speak for myself, but especially coming from the woman to the man, it feels like, yeah, she made a request, but maybe that's our needing to pay more attention, or maybe needing to turn up our intensity on what we're listening for or to. But a lot of the time, that's not communicated. That's not what we get.
Right.
What we get is, yeah, this thing needs to happen, and
we'll worry about it.
we'll worry about it, but it's not that big a deal. So we move about the cabin like it's not that big a deal. So what I'm saying is, even if that's your experience, and I can't knock that it is, what I can say is, it wasn't my intention to make you feel that way. And just by saying that, it doesn't necessarily negate the feelings that you had. And your feelings are valid, but that's why you have to own them, because only you can do anything about them.
And it's great that you said that, because the next one is take responsibility for your part in it.
Got to take it.
That doesn't mean that you accept whatever's thrown at you, but you can't walk out thinking you had no part in it. It's a relationship.
It's a Yo.
Right?
Yo.
It's a relationship.
Yeah.
Real. Now, to say that everything that happens between you has equal weight, it wouldn't be fair.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, there's going to be times where, I'm going to have to take more responsibility. He's going to have to take more responsibility depending on the nature of the situation.
True.
But either way, we always stop and say, okay, what could I have done better?
Right.
What do I need to take away from this? What do I need to just, sometimes it's just, look, I need to hear this and move on. But other times, I really need to take something away from this.
Yeah.
And if I'm not sure, I'll ask.
That's fair.
But the point is, you need to take responsibility for your part in it.
I think that's an easy concept to get. I mean, at the end of the day, own it, even if you feel like you have a lot less to deal with and to do with the situation landing the way it did. Own it anyway, because your feelings about it can only be changed by you.
Right.
So you owning it, not to take responsibility for what happened, but you own it so that you can take responsibility of the way you'll experience it and give it back to the world.
Right. And sometimes that's even, you may not even understand what you did.
Yeah, true.
They may tell you as clear as day, and you're like, I really don't understand what just happened here or what was said.
Fact.
But even in that, you can own, okay, hey, whatever I did caused this emotion or caused this feeling in my spouse.
That's it.
So I need to recognize that they have this emotion. And so that is owning.
Is owning it.
Even though you're like, I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes it's like that, y'all. All right. The next one is seek to understand, not convince. And, our friends will tell you, this is something that we always talk about, we don't care about being right. No. Right? Like, okay, yeah, I'm right. Okay, now what? You're right. Okay, fine. I'll let you have it this day.
It's your fault.
We more care about the progress. Right? And so you want to seek to understand your spouse versus trying to convince. And what does that mean? So if we're having a discussion about something, he may have a point that's usually different than mine, sometimes even opposite than mine, just because we think so different, right? But what I choose to do is try to understand where he's coming from, which is really, really hard because I'm filtering that through Nadia lens, not Tabari lens. So it's really hard sometimes because I'm like, okay, I'm filtering this through my woman brain, my Nadia brain, my all of these brains that aren't his. And so I have to put my thoughts kind of aside for a moment to hear where he's coming from versus trying to say, okay, yeah, but don't you understand this? Don't you understand that? Don't you understand that? Trying to convince him of my point.
Yeah. And I got to say, a lot of the time, couples do this to each other. We try to convince instead of convey.
Yes.
We try to talk instead of listen.
Yep.
it's a different experience when you put what do we tell kids all the time? 2 ears, one mouth.
2 years, one mouth.
You know what I'm saying? Because if you can actually take a listen and really pay attention to what's being said, people are generally telling you actions that represent their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I fell down and I hurt myself. I'm in pain. This pain happens to be physical. But, it really hurt my feelings when you said could be talking in the same way. And that instead of a physical pain, we're talking about an emotional one.
Mm-hmm. Next one, take time to reflect if you're emotional or upset. Y'all, we are upset. We're not in a good place, especially if something happens in your relationship. So you definitely need to take some time to just step away, get your thoughts together. And I challenge you as couples to allow space for your partner to do that.
Ooh.
Because I've talked to people where it's like, well, they don't want to go to, she doesn't want to go to bed mad, or he doesn't want to go to bed mad. And so now the pressure is for the one person to talk about it, even though they're not in a place to talk about it, because the other person doesn't want to go to bed mad. And so what you end up happening is now you have this person who's like, okay, no, we need to talk about this now. And then you have the other person that's like, okay, we could talk about this now, but
you sure?
They're mad. So now they're quiet. They have nothing to say because it's like, okay, I don't want to talk about this now, but she does. So now the other person is perceiving their quiet as, okay, well, you don't have anything to say. So
it could be messy.
It could be really, really messy.
It could be messy.
So take time, get your emotions together. Don't come to the conversation too emotional, because when we're emotional, we do and we say things that we don't really mean to say or do. Which can leave a print, an imprint on someone, or, just take time to work through your emotions and then come back to the conversation once you're done. It's so useful, y'all.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I know you don't want to go to bed mad, but I'm not in a place to talk about this right now. We will talk about it at a later date. I promise I won't leave you hanging. But right now is not a good time. And again, if you're on the other side of that, you need to be able to give them space to that. But you have to come back and talk about it at some point. That is not an excuse for you to just say, okay, we're going to come back and talk about it. 3, 4, 5 weeks have passed and you haven't brought it back up. If you're asking for the space to talk about this, then you need to be able to come back
and take responsibility
and talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's real. That's real. And I second it, because that's one of the biggest things that I learned in this marriage. And she taught me that, because I would be like, I don't want to talk about this right now. But then after the next day, I was good. So in my mind, we good because I'm good. No, we're not good because you're good. It's not fair. It's not a realistic thought process on how to move forward if you're really trying to communicate.
Yeah. All right. We got a couple more, y'all. Don't be afraid to say what you need from them. Make sure it's clear, reasonable, and of course, don't ask for things you aren't willing to do yourself.
Yeah. That's a big one. That's a big one, because a lot of the time we're saying everything but what we mean to say. It's really not a good thing when you're unwilling to say exactly what's on your mind.
Yeah.
Even if you feel like it's going to cause a problem, let it cause the problem you think it's going to cause. You know why? Because first off, a whole lot of the time, it's not going to cause the problem you think it's going to cause. That's you being worried about it. Second, even in the event that it does, it can tell you a lot about where your partner is and where you are. So, as long as it's truthful and it's honest, say what's on your mind. You shouldn't actually be held up to not feel like you can say what's on your mind.
I mean, you do find a lot of people in spaces where they don't feel like they can say what they want to say because of many reasons, either fear or, okay, well, why am I wasting my time saying this if they're not going to hear me,
I can see
or it's going to cause a fight. So I just really don't feel like it, and so that's kind of tricky for a lot of people because, they're in relationships where they don't feel like they can say what they can. But to your point, say it anyway, because at least one, you can say, okay, well, I've said it, because no one's a mind reader, right? So
that part.
You want to be able to just say you've said it. I understand that, that could cause a lot of issues. But at least that for your own clarity, you have put it in the atmosphere, you have talked about it, and you never know. Hopefully it will be received well. It may not always.
But the other thing is, you will probably practice saying it differently and saying it in different ways. And in your ability to say it in different ways, your partner might hear it and go, oh, that clicked. I got that. I didn't get it before when you said it. And you definitely said it 100 million times before. But when you said it like that, I got it. That also can be very helpful going into the future, because now you can say to yourself, oh, that's how they understand.
That's how they understand.
Now you can start to just tailor these types of situations to be able to communicate way more effectively with your partner, who very well might be very willing to hear and listen, but may not be always getting the point.
Yeah. And I mean, it could be something as simple as, this is not working.
Yeah.
So we need to try something different. That doesn't, I didn't say a lot, but I said a lot.
Right.
Because you may find yourself backed up against a wall and you're like, okay, I don't know how to say it, what to say, but you go down to the root. This isn't working. So we're going to have to try something different, or
because it's saying, I don't have the right answer, but I know this ain't it.
This ain't it. Right? And so that was very clear, like I said, reasonable, like I said, and
that's what counts.
That's what counts.
All right, real quick. We're already over time, but one more, because we feel like this is important. This is a bonus one. That is, talk early and talk often. These things change as we evolve as people. So checking in regularly, and whenever things are a problem or concern that keeps coming up on the line with your communication, always check in. Do it early. Do it up front. Do it often. Even so much so as you have regular family meetings and you check up on everything, not just the logistics of the home. Don't take that time always to just talk about the logistics of the home. Talk about the state of your communication. Talk about the state of your relationship. How are you there? How are you emotionally? She always asks me, so, how are you feeling? Or what are you feeling? And I'm like, I don't know, man.
I try not to.
I'm hungry.
I try not to, but I'm a feeling person.
What she's trying to ascertain is my emotional state. So what it is, if I don't have the words, I'll say, well, honestly, I don't necessarily have the words, but this is kind of where I am. And I try my best to answer the question as best as I can. And just that effort lets her see at least my mindset. I don't know what she can get from it, but it's my job to at least see the effort she's making to figure it out, and to try to give something back, and to be very clear if I can. If I'm very like, yep, I know exactly where I am. This is it. Or if I'm not, to be like, hey, I'm not exactly sure how to put this, but this is what I'm feeling, and I hope we can work past it. But let me know. Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, that was our communication topic today for y'all. Again, remember, follow us, like, subscribe, hit the bell, all of the things.
It is important. We've been loving the community that we've been building so far. So please come join us, and let's just join this conversation. Let's talk about how to get these marriages better.
Yeah. Let's do it. Because remember, we're always better together.